obviously,
Hello.
hello, yeah, hello, Hazel. So we've done, this is our second one we're doing now, which is what we call a mindful caring podcast, kind of. And it's just, yeah, if anyone's listened to the live one, or you might be listening to the recording, it's just because we both, have been working in the care system, but we both are really familiar with meditation and mindfulness. And so we just felt like we wanted to start a conversation about it and different aspects of it, because we were having these conversations anyway, offline, and we thought, some of this would be really useful, but finding the time to package it all up and deliver to people is just, time is so difficult sometimes. So, but we still wanted to share it. So that's why we thought we'd start these little chats online. So, Hazel, do you want to just say a wee bit about your background and who you are, just to start with, and then we'll get into the...
Yeah, yeah. My name's Hazel Melville. I'm just putting down my cup of tea. Yeah, and as Lorraine says, yeah, I've been working with care experienced kids for a long time now. Started with working in domestic abuse charity as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So sort of early intervention, and then into foster care agencies and stuff. So I support a lot of children and teens, and
Do you know
yeah,
how many? Do you know how many kids you support?
sorry,
You know how many kids you support?
I have supported over the years. I wouldn't like to think, but
Hundreds?
I've possibly, yeah, possibly many have come through the door, do you know, as well. And I
Yeah.
think it's that bit about it's quite different now, really, in fostering,
Yeah.
because you have you've already got records on that child or young person, so you kind of know a bit about their background and stuff. And that I find can be quite detrimental sometimes to our roles, because we're already judging. And that's what I like about the
Yeah.
mindfulness and meditation. We learn not to judge, you know. And so when people were coming through doors when I was working in domestic abuse, you didn't know their backgrounds, you didn't know who was coming. It was just a case of, you made no judgments, and you got to know that
Yeah.
person, that mum and that child, based on your experiences.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely something, and I totally understand the legal requirements for it. But yeah, sometimes, that's someone else's trained but interpretation of that young person. It's one aspect of them, it's not the full
Absolutely.
aspect of them.
And we
So
see the
sorry,
negatives.
I
Yeah.
interrupted you there. How
No.
many years, or do you know want to say how many years you've been?
Um, it's over 17 anyway. And before that, I worked in offices. So working in offices was amazing because, I did like sales ledger roles, reconciliations. You could move one figure to one place, one figure to there, and it would all tie up really
Yeah.
nicely. But working with children who have been traumatized and stuff, that just doesn't happen. There is
No.
no kind of formula really, is there?
No,
No.
they're not robots. You can't program them, although people think they can sometimes, I think, but they just can't. Okay, thanks, Hazel. I'll just say a tiny wee bit about me. So I met Hazel because she came on the program I ran, Connected Kids, and it's all about training people to teach kids mindfulness and meditation. And it was actually in the process of finishing our professional training for that, as I was reading the case studies, I got very excited because I could see the progress she was making with some of the young people in care by teaching them meditation skills, and it was amazing. So I was like, oh my goodness, Hazel, we have to do something together. I don't know what it is, but we have to do something, because you obviously, working with that. And I'm also a foster mum, and we fostered 17 children of everything from short term care, we used to be called respite, to, now we're permanent carers of a teenage boy. So, it's in a variety of ages as well. So I too have also sometimes introduced children to things when they've really been struggling, and it's been amazing. And like you, Hazel, we probably use these skills certainly daily, because we know it helps us in a really challenging role. It's not
Yeah,
easy. Parenting, I don't think, is easy anyway. But I think when you're trying to help kids who've got trauma, it can be really full on sometimes. So,
absolutely.
so the subject for this one was compassion fatigue. We've got a whole host of subjects that are coming up, different talks. And I'll try and promote that somewhere. I'll make a wee list. But the compassion fatigue thing for me was, certainly the first time round being a foster mum with a boy in short-term care, I wish I'd known about that a bit more. I wish I'd prepared myself a bit more. I would have helped myself and him a lot better. This time round, I feel like I'm a lot more informed myself, and I use my skills much more. But if anyone's listening, there will be people listening who know what this means, but for any who don't know what it means, I think Hazel and I will offer our interpretation of what it means personally, not just like theoretically. What does it mean to you, Hazel, compassion fatigue?
I think, as you say, well, I think you saw me at one point, Lorraine. I think, I think not long after maybe I'd done my course, and then I was going through a difficult period of time. And, like you, Lorraine, I don't think it's something that we're taught or told about enough. Of the subject of how it affects us, and then how it affects our caring or our roles or whatever and stuff as well. I think for me, I put it in terms of I feel like my heart's closing when I start to, feel that things are just chipping away. I might have, we all make mistakes, we're all human and stuff. You maybe made a mistake or something, and because we all do, and you beat yourself up about it, and we're our own worst critics, without a doubt. Mindfulness has helped me with that for sure. But realising, I think that I was getting a lot of self-esteem from doing my job and getting good results with young people and stuff as well. And when that goes wrong, taking that quite personally as well, that I wasn't getting it right. Or just other things like we were sort of talking about, your battery. It's like a battery and how it starts to become depleted. Other things going on in your life, chipping away, feeling a bit like the kids, I think, sometimes as well, that our voices aren't heard enough in a big structure, whether you're a teacher, a social worker, foster carer, a carer, whatever role we have. If we're dealing with traumatized children, sometimes we feel our voices are not being heard, and we can't do enough, and I think that just starts to get, as caring people, I think that starts to deplete our batteries.
I think sometimes, what I'm feeling at the moment as you're talking is that sometimes I think that compassion fatigue can sit in because it feels like you're climbing a mountain. And instead of just concentrating on the one step that you can do, we keep getting, oh my goodness, look at the size of that mountain. Oh my goodness, that's like such a massive mountain. And like you're saying, my skills and your skills of, right, I see the mountain, I know it's there, it's massive. I'm just going to concentrate on whatever I can do right now, because otherwise that feeling of overwhelm comes over. And like you say, we just kind of we shut down the heart center. For me, that's the thing that, and I think, compassion fatigue for me, like you, I've experienced it too, it's that, and I didn't know what it was. It is that, that feeling of like you're failing in some way, and you started with such high hopes and intentions, and you thought, this will work out and I'll make such a difference to this young person's life. And then you just see it start to unravel and you think, what? And as a foster carer, I would have to say that one of the, unhelpful suggestions, I have to say, from not the people that we foster with now, but previously, were things, like, yes, you've got all the responsibility, but no control. And you're like, well, thanks. That's great. That's how does that help me? That doesn't help me. Whereas if someone had said, look, you don't have control over these things, but this is what you do have control over. You can control looking after your sleep, control looking after yourself, being the best version you can be in these circumstances. And then that's what that advice to me would have been so much more helpful than what I heard.
I remember coming on your very first course when I did the CAM Kids one. And, at that time I came and I was coming along to the course, and it was a case of, right, I'm going to learn all these meditation skills for the children and young people, and really looking forward to it and stuff as well. And I think one of the first questions you kind of asked us all in the group was kind of, what's working for you? What's working against you? And I remember, at the time, I can tell you now, I was kind of like, what's that got to do with anything, really? What's working for me? I had never really thought about that probably before. What was working against me? And I suppose kind of the pandemic and COVID's given us a bit of that time though, hasn't it, as well, to pull things out of what is working for us and what's working against us. Do you know? And yeah, what nourishes us, what makes that battery feel a bit better. But yeah, that was the first, I think, in me actually being in that role and actually thinking about myself almost. You know, just actually taking time to go, yeah, what about me? I'm getting self-esteem here, I'm helping people, I'm doing whatever, but what about me in all this as well? Because I need to look after myself.
I think that, you know, so this is something, if people are listening and they've never practiced meditation before, maybe have a certain maybe slightly woo-woo view of it, I don't know. But for me, the biggest thing I get from it is the ability to self-reflect. Because, and like you're just saying there, you know, asking yourself that question. And I suppose we're a society that's really driven to got to find an answer, got to find a solution. It's right there, you know, we can't go on without a solution. But actually, sometimes just asking the question and sitting with it and acknowledging the thoughts and feelings that accompany that can be really powerful, because then you're like, you're not using all your energy trying to pretend it's not existing, but just sitting there going, this is real, you know, this is, and as soon as it's a strange phenomenon, I think, that when you start to do that in a self-reflective way, it's almost like you start to breathe better, you take pressure off yourself, because you're like, this is real, you know, this is it. And the more there's this false illusion that the more I pretend, I can't admit that, I can't do that, I can't pretend that I'm failing or I'm not doing well, it's like you build up this pressure and it feels overwhelming. And when you sit down and go, this is how I feel right now, and it's okay to feel like this is normal, it's like, oh my goodness, it's like taking the pressure out the pressure valve. Really
rather than suppressing the emotions, I think, isn't it? Because we all go to things, you know, we all do it. I'll maybe eat too much, I'll eat something, you know, when I'm feeling upset or feeling that I'm not coping so well or whatever, you know, drinking, gambling, whatever. I don't do those, but you know,
people do,
people do, do you know? But yeah, all these things that we kind of use as coping mechanisms, I think, and we don't know why we're doing it necessarily. And I think that's the compassion fatigue bit and thing for me as well, is starting to notice when you're going for other things like food or drink or whatever as well. Start to find out about yourself. Why am I feeling like this? What am I feeling? And like you say, Lorraine, bringing those emotions out actually, rather than just keep suppressing them, because it's like the volcano, isn't it? It's just going to erupt and it'll come out in the wrong ways. And I'm certainly seeing that at the moment with a lot of people. Seeing it with a lot of teenagers. I'm seeing it with a lot of kids. But I'm also seeing it in a lot of adults as well. I think we are all feeling overwhelmed. I don't think we feel supported enough in our roles, to be perfectly honest. And I'm hearing that from so many people, whether it be teachers, social workers, care workers. Everybody's feeling the same. We just don't feel supported at this moment. But do we really know what it is that we want supported with? I think we have to ask ourselves that. What you need to find out about yourself, I think, and take some sort of responsibility to go, what is it that I need for somebody to support me? Because nobody else really knows that, to be honest, do they? You know, and then we start to get angry and we start to get all these things, don't we? You know, because we don't feel that people are hearing us.
Well, see, I think what happens is that if we don't have that ability to sit down and go and ask yourself questions like, what's working for me, what's working against me, and then just acknowledge all that stuff that comes up, I think what really happens is that we make up those stories in our head, particularly about the children who know how to press their buttons, or, you know, and I don't mean they consciously know, they're just in a pattern, you know, they're in a pattern of, you know, like almost like a holding pattern sometimes, when they start to see the stress levels rise and the people that are meant to take care of them or be on their side or look after them. And I think that there's just that, that sense of overwhelm kind of takes over. And then because we can't cope with it, we're not owning it, we project it onto them. And then it starts to break down, you know, and it's like everything that child does, everything that they say, it's like filtered through this sense of denial. I think that, oh, it's you, it's not me, it's you, which is
And we take it
rubbish. It's
personally.
absolute rubbish. It's always, always, starts with us. And that anyone listening who's maybe not practiced meditation might go, what? Of course it's them. They did this and they did that. But it's our response, it's how we feel, it's a place that we're in, no one can control our feelings other than ourselves. No one, it doesn't matter what behavior they do. And we give away all our power in that moment if we are saying it's your fault, you've done this. It's like, okay, how do I
making it
support
worse.
myself now?
It's learning to respond, isn't it? As they say, respond, not react to something that's triggering us,
Or can I say, if we do react, let's remember we're human. When we do react, I've paused a moment, I have reacted. It's the ability to recognize, oh my goodness, I've really reacted here. I need to own this, and I need to sit down with that young person, sometimes apologize and say, look, I'm really sorry that I spoke that way, or my voice got louder than normal. It's not you. I still love you. You're still amazing. It's just, this is where I am just now. There's a bit of a struggle going on. And I think adults sometimes don't want to do that because they think, oh my goodness, they've got enough on their plate. They don't need anything else. But kids know. They already know. They already feel it and sense it. Why, we pretend that everything's okay when it's not. It's nonsense.
I think that kind of goes into power and control as well, which is another discussion that we're going to have as well, isn't it? I think there's a lot of people have a real thing with power and control, when it comes to children, that we as the adults should know better. And it's trying to kind of work around that, I think, as well, isn't it?
I mean, I agree. I think it's like recognizing with our foster son, he came to us, a few years ago, and the way that he was younger then, and he'd been through quite a lot, and we obviously put certain things in place. And I think there's also that I recognised a lack of maturity, sometimes there's maturity, sometimes there's not. But it's for me to go, I can't just keep treating him like the 10 or 11 or 12-year-old. He's becoming a young man, so we need to find a way he's still not responsible enough yet, but if I keep using that approach, with boundaries in the way that I maybe set because that's what he needed then it's not gonna work very well as they get older.
I think that as well, that kind of, as they call it, blocked care sometimes as well, when you've got compassion fatigue and stuff as well, for me is a bit about how, we see the behaviours and stuff sometimes in the children, and we are already making that judgment, and we're already going down the path of, we know what the outcome's going to be sometimes, how that kid's going to be or whatever, because we've seen it so many times, and it's that kind of learning to kind of just sort of not make that judgment, not make that call, and just see how it plays out. Otherwise, because otherwise we then get into that whole drama as well of it, don't we? And we all play our parts, and it all just goes round in that vicious circle each time, and we just keep falling into it. If we wake up,
a classic example. A classic example, I think, for us last year, and I know we've all been through lockdowns. I think the pandemic's had a huge effect on everybody. So we should all be, a bit kinder to ourselves as well, I think, and admitting, this is a struggle. But one of the things, because of homeschooling and things, and then suddenly, our son back at school and having to do homework and revision and just, that kind of back into that structure, which was really quite, I can't begin to tell you the number of, it's a kind of strange thing, as a foster mum, because I'm really glad he argues back, because I know that means that he feels comfortable enough to do that with us without worrying about repercussions. So, there's that part, but there's the other part, which is like, you have to, if you don't do this, then you're gonna fall behind at school, and and I know school doesn't suit everybody, but he's an academic boy, he's a bright boy. So it's that, recognizing the potential and going, you're wasting that. So anyway, we laid off him for like, I think about a month, gave him the spare time to do anything he wanted other than tech. He wasn't allowed to use tech in that spare time, but anything else, or he could study. And he chose to do nothing. And
Yeah.
then he sat a test which he didn't pass, which he expected to pass, and oh my goodness, all his friends were passing. The shock to him was just like, and we sat down with them, not in a told you so kind of way, in a more, we really love you and we want you to do well.
Yeah.
Please see where we're coming from. We know you can do
Yeah.
this, you know. And he recognized it too. So there was that, like you're saying, that
Yeah.
sometimes you can't keep speaking if they're not listening.
Yeah.
You have
That's it.
to, you know, be aware, because it's exhausting for one thing, you know. And I think for us, compassion fatigue would have really set in if we'd just
Yeah.
soldered on, you know, in that
Yeah.
way, trying to make it
Yeah,
happen.
completely. Yeah, because just interesting you saying that. I had a young man as well, actually, that I was working with, and he said that when he was with a certain foster carer and stuff as well, and there was a lot of pressure, again, a very academic young man, you know, but was skipping school, wasn't going to school and whatever, couldn't cope with it at the time. Placement broke down and whatever. He went to new foster carers, and what they said to him right away was, you know, look, we know you're going to Skype school. But if you're going to do it, just be honest with us and tell us.
Yeah.
And he said that the impact that it had on him actually was amazing, because he actually felt very guilty. And he was like, he couldn't do it. So it worked in a different way, you know, for him, completely worked differently. That he did go to school because he didn't want to let them down. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
Isn't that funny? But you see, this is the thing, I think, something else I wanted to bring up. I remember in my first foster care training, I remember a statement that was said to me, which I thought was remarkable, not in a good way. And it was, you know, just, you got to protect yourself because these kids know how to press your buttons and they'll press them.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, hold on, you know, that's the last thing they need. They don't need somebody who's, say they're caring, but yet it's putting this barrier up to, oh, I'm going to protect myself in case you do this or you do that. You know, I think what that carer has done is called it out in a compassionate way and has said, look, we know who you are and what you've been struggling with. So we'll meet you there, and just, you know, do your best, but please, you know, meet us where we're, you know, keeping that open rather than closing it down, trying to.
Yeah. It's that whole, just like me, isn't it? Every kid that I've ever come across, what do they want? They just want to be treated like us. They just want their voices to be heard. They want to feel safe is the biggest thing that they want to feel. And there's so many of them that their behaviour comes from not feeling safe. We know that, you know. But it's so much like that. I remember when I very first was training and I went into a residential unit, and it was all these teenagers all kicking off, all being machoed, you know, and whatever. And I went in the office, I'll be honest, and shut the door and I thought, I ain't coming back out there, you know. And then I was given this 14-year-old young man to work with, you know, who had been particularly challenging and stuff as well. And, you know, he was, you know, kind of at first giving it kind of, you know, I'm not going to speak to you and whatever and stuff as well. But when I actually just sat and listened to him, you know, and you think, he doesn't want to be behaving like this. This isn't him. Do you know, it's triggers that are going on round about him, do you know, but ultimately he's a lovely guy. You know, all of our children are fantastic, and they're so creative, and they've got so many talents. And I think that's a bit about the compassion fatigue for me as well, is we lose sight of the, you know, the unique talents that each of our children have. Again, possibly because we've already made judgments about them, we've heard about them, we're seeing it all on bits of paper, you know, a chronology that's never good, let's be honest, it's always the negatives. For me, a bit the compassion fatigue is about losing sight of that and going back to that. It's trying to remember, let's see what the unique bits are about our children, let's bring them out, you know, because, and we lose sight for that for ourselves as well.
I think, and you know, and I think it's that, you know, that young person is amazing that they're even still here, you know, even if they've got behaviour that's really challenging and it's really difficult. You know, I've always said, of all the children we've looked after, the very fact that they get up and put a school, if they can do that, put a school uniform on and go to school, I mean, given everything they've been through, what they've experienced, I think is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we forget to, and maybe because we don't do it to ourselves enough, we don't, as you say, like feel that gratitude,
Yeah.
for ourselves. So it's like we can't offer it to them. So we don't see those little small things as being amazing, like really quite powerful. We
Yeah.
just, like you say, it's almost like we're trained, our negativity bias, the part of the train that's in survival is just looking for the negative in case something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And actually,
Protect
when
ourselves. Yeah.
well, it's yeah, I'm going to come back to gratitude in a minute, but
Hmm.
just that whole sense of, and I think as well that there's the compassion fatigue is, for me, one of the things I think we really have to do now after having had the pandemic and now everything else that's going on in the world with Ukraine, it's not that, don't be aware of what's going on in the world, but don't become addicted and totally
That's
obsessed with it.
yeah.
Because, I mean, in the last few days, actually, I'll share, we had some really challenging behavior going on. I mean, I was like, oh my goodness, what is going
Hmm.
on here? And
Hmm.
it was escalating and escalating. And eventually I was like, right, through, come, sit down. And it was really funny. I'll share, with people listening. I was really like, what is going on here? This is like, you can't speak to me like that. This is, and then I thought, I'm not close to you, but I am standing up, and you're sitting down. The dynamic doesn't feel right to me. That feels so. I sat down,
Yeah.
and he couldn't look at me. He just couldn't look at me. His
Yeah.
head was down, and I just said, talk to me. This is your opportunity to talk to me and tell me what's going on, what's difficult, And at the time, he still couldn't talk to me about what was going on. There'd been some really big stuff happened at school, not with him personally, but really difficult stuff, like some
Yeah.
violent stuff going on at school, which was very worrying. And then, you don't want to put words into their mouth, but they don't know how to express it. So I'd
No.
made some suggestions. I said, is it what happened at school last week? Is it like to do with all the talk of Ukraine and things? Because modern studies teacher is great, but goes on and on and on about it, and
Yeah.
has quite an influence. I'm like, calm it down. So anyway, we had this chat. It didn't really resolve itself there, but I came away, and he went away, and he came back, and he just said, "I'm really sorry. I don't know what that was about." And I just gave him a big hug. And then we
Yeah.
sat down, and I said, any idea what it might be? And he went, I don't know. He said, I think it's maybe just, yeah, everything that happened last week and the Ukraine stuff going on, I hear about it. And we noticed he'd been on his Google quite a lot, like looking at a lot of the new stuff and everything.
Yeah.
And, you might think, oh, what would a teenage boy be interested in that? But, they're aware. They've got social media access and things
Absolutely.
all the time. And it's really difficult for them, And it was amazing, because it was that it's that thing of remembering, because I said to him at one point, nobody can go through life without being grumpy. You will have grumpy days. That's totally
Yeah.
normal. I don't mind that. I don't mind you being grumpy. Just don't take it out on me. Don't take it out on me or anyone else here. Own
I
your
always use
grumpiness
that.
and say you're grumpy. That's it. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I always use that kind of, the weather one. Your feelings are like the weather. Do you know
Yeah.
that, but they won't last forever. Every situation will change, that it blows away sometimes, and stuff as well. Like you say, it's for, yeah, the children and teenagers to how they manage their emotions is a
Yeah,
massive,
totally.
it's
It's massive.
absolutely massive. They've never been taught it before, so how can they expect to be, just you saying that as well about brings up kind of safety for me as well, because we're all feeling unsafe at the moment.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that for so many, like I've sort of touched on there, with so many of the children and young people, each of them just feels so unsafe,
Yeah.
and so we're feeling this now a bit more, I think, as well. The world does not feel the same as what it did
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
and yeah, like you, I have switched off to the news now completely, still tune in occasionally and whatever, but I
You don't.
realised that was depleting me.
Yes.
Don't listen to
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Or, me and my meditation ways, if I hear stuff that's really difficult, I have to start sending I send a powerful positive thought. Like all the people in Ukraine, I'll be like sending lots of love to them,
Yeah.
just hope they're protected, hope they're safe. You know, the metta, you know, may you be happy, may you be
Yeah,
safe, may you be protected. That's one of the meditation things, you know,
yeah,
that people can practice. So when they get bombarded everywhere from like this negative news, be aware of it and then go, but just send a different signal almost, you know,
yeah,
to the one that you're receiving. And if we practice it, you can teach it to young people as well. I was going to say, what do you suggest then, you know, for people who are, I mean, obviously the ideal is that as soon as you start to feel yourself wobbling in compassion fatigue terms, you do something to support yourself and then you can
yeah.
start supporting kids. But we don't always catch it in time. You know,
No, we
sometimes we're like,
don't.
oh my goodness, reflecting
Yeah.
afterwards, I know exactly where that came from, but you
I
know,
think it is. I think it is just it's, there is no one thing obviously either. I mean, if I'm feeling like I do try, as I say, to take 10 minutes out, even like I say, I like doodling, drawing or whatever. That's kind of meditation for me, even as well as just doing that and just focusing my head in that moment. It can be a craft thing, it can be whatever. We did the mandalas, didn't we, when we were
mm,
training, stuff. I'll do that sometimes. I'll sit and colour in and I'll do a meditation just doing that.
mm.
If I'm feeling something really frustrated me at work or whatever and stuff is, but sometimes I'll go and put music on and I'll jump about like an idiot.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
it totally grinds me and it gets my frustrations out, and
yeah,
stuff as well. So I've seen me doing that as well,
yeah.
but more and more, it's for me, it's about finding out who I actually am,
Mm,
finding out what I like doing, finding out what I don't like doing,
mm,
and when that's triggering a button for me, as well. And for that can be really hard for people, I think, that triggering. What does trigger me? Well, I suppose it's like if you've been stung by a wasp, isn't it? And although the wasp isn't going to come and sting you again, you hear the noise and you're triggered. So
yes, yeah,
something's
you
triggering you
react
there,
before
right?
it's
Okay.
happened, yeah.
Yeah, and I now ask myself, if say I've been part of a review for a child or whatever, what actually triggered me there? What
Mm,
actually got me going? And I think about it more. So it really is just getting to know myself better, I
mm,
would say, is the biggest thing, and finding out how you can do that, because that seems like a huge daunting thing. And I know before I came on your course, Lorraine, although I had supervision and stuff, that just wouldn't have made sense to me, probably, if I'm being honest. I would have been, how do I get to know myself? I wouldn't have known.
yeah.
It's the meditation and the mindfulness practices that have really helped me know what my triggers are and know when that battery's starting to run
Yeah,
down a
I
bit,
agree.
you
I think
know?
for me, yeah, I mean, some people might be, I suppose if you're listening to this, you have some interest in meditation, but even turning day-to-day things into the meditation, if you're not a doodler, sit with your cup of coffee and just be really aware that you're drinking your cup of coffee, that the temperature of your coffee, the taste of it, just the whole experience of it, how it was made, just really using that one moment of drinking instead of doing it mindlessly. Or maybe things like I used to do gardening quite a lot, so I used to love my garden. I used to go out and just potter for like 10 minutes,
Yeah,
even pulling weeds out, whatever it was that you needed to do. There was a sense of, yeah, just, if you've got dogs as well or animals you can walk, or, anything like that. But the thing that for me really works is every night before I go to sleep, I keep a wee gratitude diary. So every night, I sit and I write down 3 or 4, maybe 5 things that I feel grateful for, and I just write it down. Thank you. I'm so grateful that I have had a day with, and it might be the fact that I've spent it with my husband or my foster son. It might be the fact that I've got good health. It might be the fact that, I do have a roof over my head, and, it could be anything at all. It could be big
yeah,
or small, whatever it is. And that, to me, that act of doing that helps me, no matter what's going on, keep my heart open to
yeah,
myself and to everyone else around me.
yeah,
If I don't practice that, I find myself slipping into that negativity bias, that
yeah,
spiral of the world is this and the world is that and everything is overwhelming. Whereas if I do that every night, especially before I go to sleep, it's just it puts my head into a different space before I go to sleep, and I sleep better.
Completely agree with that. It's that water the flowers, not the weeds, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because, if we focus on the weeds, they're going to overtake. So you need to focus on what is positive in your life and be grateful for it, and stuff as well. Because, like you say, we're not living in war-torn countries. We're not whatever, life could be a lot worse. And it's
yeah,
trying to remember that, isn't it? But when your battery is so low,
yeah,
sometimes I think that is really hard, even
yeah,
though as well. And I must admit, I've come to places where I've done that, but then I caught myself because I was able to go, do you know what? I don't feel like writing gratitude journal today.
yeah,
I don't feel like being grateful today, and always being childlike and go, do you know, I don't feel like doing that. I'm not going to do that today,
yeah, yeah.
But kind of being aware of it, having that awareness, realizing that, well, something's wrong here, that if I'm feeling like that, and almost forcing myself to just to do one, just write one little thing, or just be kind to somebody else makes you feel good, doesn't it, as well?
I remember in the pandemic, I did that. Oh my goodness, we were all like knocked sideways by everything that was going on. It was crazy, but every day, and I did it for me, but I also did it for myself, for other people on Facebook. I would find one thing and take a
Yeah,
picture of it and
I was
post it
doing
on my
that.
Facebook thing and just say this beautiful flower or this great cup of tea or whatever it is. Every day I found one thing, and I was doing it for me, but I was doing
Yeah,
it for everyone else that I loved as well, that I'm
yeah,
connected to on Facebook. So I was just like, this is really important. And the other thing I wanted to say is that me talking to my son yesterday, it was a form, an act of what I think is mindful communication.
yeah.
So it's that ability to both listen
Mm-hmm.
but also speak mindfully as well. So I wasn't, although I was annoyed, I was genuinely annoyed and
Mm-hmm.
upset, I make sure he knows that I can put that into words about how things are making me feel. I always make sure he knows that I still love him, even though this attitude isn't great,
Exactly.
this
Yeah,
attitude is not great at all.
yeah,
But, and also just that ability to, I call it speaking from the heart, so I'm not projecting all my stuff and all my crap onto him. I'm owning it, but at the same time, acknowledging it, but at the same time, just giving him space once I've finished speaking to not say anything, and just to
yeah,
let him sit with that, and to see if something comes out of it. Now, some kids process that differently, sometimes he is able to share there and then. He wasn't yesterday, and I had to walk away. That was my mindful,
yeah,
response, because it was like, this is not going anywhere now. So it still feels like very tense. So I'll just remove myself, and I'm making it clear I'm removing myself. And then
yeah.
later, he was able to reflect and come back, and then we were able to,
Yeah. That's it,
acknowledge that.
and like we've said, we've touched on kind of, as well. They're just not used to being listened to.
I know.
They're really not, and and so many kind of important decisions that are taken about them and stuff. And how many of them ever want to fill out forms? If they're here experienced, they don't want to do it because they think, well, what's the point anyway? And that's what we become as well when we become compassion fatigued. I
No.
think we just think, what's the point? What's the point in, you know, doing this or doing that because it's not going to make any difference in the long run? What am I doing that's going to make any difference anyway? Because
Yeah.
and then that's when you fall into this, well, what the outcome's going to be.
I
It's
know.
not good outcomes for, looked after children and young people. But we have to remember that actually we can make a bit of a difference. It's
Yeah.
that what we came back to, what was our
Yeah.
motivation
Yeah.
for coming into the roles that we're doing, again, whether that's teaching, social work, care, whatever that is, what brought us here? We'll have to keep pulling ourselves back into it. We can make a bit of a difference,
Yeah.
maybe not massively, but
But
just one
we're
small
not meant to
little
live their
thing.
life though. We're not meant
Yeah,
to live their life. They have to live their own life,
exactly.
and we're kind of helping guide them along the way, but we can't live it for them. I was going to say that the one other thing I'd say to other foster carers is, and maybe this goes with you, colleagues, members of staff, is just watch that it doesn't become a bitch fest,
Yes,
with
it's a
other
good point.
people. Sometimes you can be with other people and they're like, "Eh, eh, eh, eh," and I totally get the need to sometimes rant and let
Yes.
go of everything, you know, that you feel that you're experiencing. But if it becomes this, kids know that. Kids
Yeah.
totally know if
Yeah.
people are talking about them or the, you know, that kind of thing. It's almost like, yeah, but you might be unhappy about something, and maybe there's a good friend you can talk to, but you really want a kind of friend who doesn't join in, who
Yes.
kind of goes, who just listens and lets you rant or vent, whatever you need to do, and then just lets it go, you know. And it's kind of, because I think otherwise that if it starts this kind of conversation, a snowball, it's not healthy for
I
you
think,
or anyone else.
sorry to interrupt you, Lorraine, but I think, you know, I mean, I totally get it because, you know, I've worked in residential care and I've had kids out, you know, and stuff when they have, you know, they've gone fighting with other kids, you know, and you're the one who you want to put a sign up going, I'm not their mum, you know, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And there's all that kind of thing, you know, your kids can totally embarrass you to the general public that do not know, you know, what they've been
Yeah.
through, their
Yeah.
history, etc. as well. So it seems totally unacceptable. So you feel judged. You start to feel judged by colleagues sometimes, I think, as well, you know, through other foster carers, other, you know, there's a whole sense of feeling judged. And that is when our compassion fatigue really goes down as well, because we start to close in. Or we go the opposite way, and exactly like you're saying, I've seen so many people who feel the benefit from talking to people who are in the same professions as them because nobody else gets it. You don't feel, do you know? So you feel safe and supported and heard, and that's fantastic. But then, like you're saying, you have to watch because that can become very much, you know, that we just get into the complaining side of things and we look for the negatives and we start to feel unsupported, unheard, and the group tightens.
But you know, it's for me. I was thinking it's kind of like if anyone, you know, like if you do watch the news, I've noticed it today actually. There was something on the news and it was about the Ukraine thing, but they had pictures of real people, you know, and they described a family, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's so more powerful than just you spouting statistics at me. And I think
Yeah.
it's that thing of, you know, these aren't just, you know, they're not some generic kind of traumatized children. It's this, whatever their name is, and this, whatever their name is, you know, and it's like
People.
they're people, they're unique people that are, you know, extraordinary. And for whatever reason that they've gone through this trauma, you know, I truly believe there is the potential, because I've come across this, certainly if you try, and there's a lot of shame that children can have as well about their reactions to things. Like you were saying, that boy, he didn't want to behave that way, but hey, he didn't know how else to what to do
Yeah.
with everything he was feeling. So if we look after ourselves, compassion fatigue, be more mindful, then there's opportunity to teach them a wee bit of it in a way that fits with them in their lifestyle and who they are, you know, so that they can understand themselves better. You know, they
Yeah.
understand why their brain works that way or their nervous system works that way, or, you know, and then they can forgive themselves, you know,
Yeah.
for that. They shouldn't be punished for it. You know, it's really about compassion for them, for sure.
I think kindness and compassion can be seen as very fluffy. I mean, let's be honest, you know, it can be, we are in quite macho roles sometimes. I mean, it's getting a lot better, but it can be seen as a macho role, which you've just got to get on with it. And, you know, if a kid's being horrible to you or whatever, you know, well, suck it up kind of thing, you know. Things are changing definitely from when I first started in this kind of role, you know, but kindness can be really difficult, can it, as well for ourselves? I think, you know, most of us come into the caring profession, we have an understanding because sometimes we've been through things ourselves, and it can really trigger things when we try to even be kind to ourselves. I think that kind of guilt and shame, as they say, as well, is there for our kids, but it's there for us as well. And I think it's acknowledging that as well, isn't it? That it can be tricky to be kind to ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I even remember training to be a foster carer, going through that Form F, you know, and the realization I had, I mean, as all of us do, and a lot of kids do, you know, we just assume and accept that what our experiences are, normal, and as we become adults, we maybe don't want to look at it because we're like, I don't want to
Yeah.
bring up any feelings I feel about that.
Close
But
that
when you
box.
become a foster carer, it does open up things
Yeah.
about yourself that you think. And I'm really grateful I practice, meditation, so that, like you say, there are days that are fantastic, days are okay, days that are quite a challenge. It's never the same, but it's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
And you recognize, oh, that's triggered that, or that's happened there, or and as soon as you start to notice that self-reflective ability means, oh, right, what do I need to do to support myself today? Because
Yeah.
otherwise it's going to be a rubbish day because I'm going to take it out on everybody else, so
Yeah.
it's
And that kind of power and control bit, like we were sort of saying as well, I think that, if you do not take that time for yourself and show yourself as a strong person
yeah.
that can take that time for yourself, your kids will. That's that little bit about they will feel possibly unsafe if you're not a strong character, because that can be taken the wrong way,
Yeah.
as well, completely, that you're the boss and you're in charge and whatever. But if you have your own boundaries within yourself and know
Mm,
yourself well enough,
yeah.
and that like you were saying, you need to take yourself off, or you need to do whatever, or, I need to do a bit of art here or whatever. The kids need to see us looking after ourselves,
Totally. Yeah.
and that's what they need. They need to see us looking after ourselves so that we can be there for them as well. And explaining that to them. If I take that little bit of time for myself, if I do a meditation, or if I do some artwork, or if I do my keep fit, whatever it is, I'm looking after me to look after you, as well.
Mhm.
And it's modeling that behavior, isn't it?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've chatted about this for quite a wee while. That's not bad going. I'll stop the recording and actually we'll end the thing in a minute. But thanks, Hazel. And we've got another
Thank
one
you.
coming up probably in a month. For the life of me, I can't remember what the title of it was, but we wrote about 10 different titles, didn't we,
I
down of all the
know.
different talks. So I'll put them up on the Facebook group. And if you're
You
listening
know,
to this, sorry, I was just going to say, if
oh
you're
no,
listening to this
no.
on the YouTube channel, I'll do the same on that. So we're
Yeah,
going
no, all I wanted to say, Lorraine, was thanks to anybody who is taking the time to listen to this, because if you are, it does show that you want to look after yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah, and that you're a fantastic person anyway, but you're even more
exactly.
fantastic because you're choosing to stay in the room. I always say you're staying in the room and you're just, you might not agree with everything we've said. It might be a bit for you, but if you stayed here listening to it, then there's definitely some change going on for you, and I hope
Definitely.
you'll reach out to us, in some way or another if you want to find out more. All right, Hazel, have a lovely week, the rest of the
Thanks,
week,
Lorraine.
and I'll see you next time, okay?
Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.